Okay, students, so during this lecture, what I would like you to do is to record for both the German and Irish immigrants where they are from, why did they come here, and what was their experience like both getting here and what was it like when they got here. What jobs did they have open to them, and what sort of discrimination, if any, they faced, and also what did they provide the United States of America. Please pause it right here in order to copy down the note-taking format that I'd like you to use. It's a simple T-chart titled German on one side, Irish on the other will suffice. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the immigration to the Americas in the early 1800s. Now, America was a melting pot from the get-go. If you remember from colonial days, people came from all over Europe to find new political freedoms in America. Well, the same thing happened in the 1840s and 1850s in a much larger wave. America was seen as a land of opportunity for the lowly and destitute of Europe. It offered both political freedom and economic freedom, and it also offered religious freedom for oppressed peoples in Europe, stuff that they did not have at home. It was going to give them a sense of autonomy to be in a new place where they would not be suffering old style oppression. Now, the American immigrant experience during the 1840s through the 1860s was a transformative one. America grew by leaps and bounds. The population of immigrants tripling and quadrupling by the 1860s. Millions of people were flooding in from European countries, fleeing as refugees, fleeing both hunger and oppression. They believed that America offered them opportunity that they could not have at home. They left their homes for this opportunity, oftentimes to be shoved into squalid hovels of the United States, where they would be cramped into small, dark neighborhoods. Now, the most common immigrants during this time were German and Irish immigrants. They came for different reasons, but what they saw in America was the same. They saw upward mobility, freedom, and freedom from a ruling class. The Irish were extremely poor and oppressed back home in Ireland by the ruling class British. Germany was a more fractured state. It wasn't the German country that we know today. It was a different groups of principalities, and the German immigrants came to having a more autonomous or together sense of community here in the United States. Now, the trip to the Americas was very difficult for all people seeking passage. It oftentimes took all of their money, and even so, with all of their money invested, all they could afford was the steerage compartment and the ship. This was the most uncomfortable deck on the entire ship. Oftentimes, it was at the very bottom. It was damp. It was cramped, and it was disease-ridden. Many people died on the passage because of disease that they would get, like things like cholera and typhus. And obviously there were many parasites as well. The trip could take up to a month at a time, and this still cost all of them. Now, so unfortunately for them, once they got here, things oftentimes did not improve. They usually congregated to the larger cities. Now, the question is, why did they come? In this case, there was a lot of push and pull. Things that pushed them out of their homelands were things like population growth in Europe, which led to less opportunities for work. There was never a lot of land for everybody. Most of it was owned by the upper crust. There was not a lot of food, especially in Ireland. They were escaping famine. There was oftentimes religious and political oppression for most people, especially Roman Catholic. Now, the pull was the perceived idea that America offered them both opportunities and freedom in terms of religious freedom and political freedom and personal freedom, economic opportunities for growth, and the one thing America had was a lot of land. Now, in this first wave, one of the largest groups to come were the Irish. About 1 million Irish immigrated to the United States between the 1830s and 1850s. This was for a number of reasons. Oftentimes, they were very oppressed back in Ireland, and in 1840, a vicious potato famine hit the Emerald Isle, which resulted in numerous people dying, and millions or thousands of people dying. Most Irish immigrants came to cities like Boston, New York, and Chicago to escape from this potato famine. And even so they were escaping, their journey was still very difficult, and many were turned away at the gates of the United States. Now, what was the potato famine? Well, the potato famine was most historians agree that it was a bacteria that attacked the Irish potato crop in the 1840s and caused it to fail. Now, the potato was imported from the Americas, specifically Peru, and unfortunately they did not have a large crop diversity in Ireland. And so when one potato crop failed, all of the potatoes failed. They did not have other potatoes to rely back on. This caused hundreds of thousands of Irish to starve to death and millions to flee the starvation in order to come to the United States in order to escape starvation and the suffering at home. Now, the big question is, did they get a better life in the United States? Well, yes and no. Most of them, as they came into the large cities like Boston, New York, and Chicago. When they got here, they had to live in cramped tenement buildings. If you think about projects today, these tenement buildings were very cramped. They oftentimes were full of disease and squalor, and it was very difficult life. Now, also, old prejudice came to the Americas as well, specifically for the fact that they were Irish and the fact that they were Roman Catholics. Many people disliked them because of this religion and were scared that the Pope would have too much influence over them and the Pope would be able to control them politically. Now, as German immigrants came, their experience was a little bit different. They most often were fleeing political disunity in Germany. Germany at this point was a group of fractured kingdoms and principalities all vying for control over one land. And caught in between were the German citizens. Now, they came because of their democratic ideas and revolutions failed in Germany. And so they came in larger numbers and more unified numbers and also more economically able numbers. In this way, they did not have to spend as much time in the disgusting 18th or 19th century cities and were able to move into the country. Now, because the Germans oftentimes were more wealthy than the Irish, they were able to buy land in the western United States and move west. They congregated in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, and Michigan. And because of this, they were able to form German farming communities away from other American communities where they were able to have some sort of autonomy or unity where they were able to speak German, carry on with German traditions, and not have to face the same sort of oppression that their Irish counterparts did. And in this way, they were more able to contribute to American society. Now, what did they contribute? Well, a lot of our Christmas traditions come from German immigrants. Also, the frontier wagon, the kindergarten that all of you attended came from our German immigrants, and then probably their largest contribution was German beer. All the big beer distributors in the United States were originally German immigrants, including Adolphus Busch with Budweiser, Adolf Coors, and so on. Also, the Kentucky rifle, which was a rifled barrel that allowed for a gunshot to go faster, further, and more accurate than ever before. This would be appropriated in the Civil War to become a very deadly killing. Now, these two groups faced very different paths when they got here. Because the Germans were more of a separatist society, they got to be left alone, and they created their own societies like the Amish and the Mennonites that were separate from other American societies. The Irish, on the other hand, were very much discriminated against, both because they were discriminated against back home by their British overlords and because of their Roman Catholic faith. Many people distrusted the Roman Catholic faith because of the influence of the Pope. Therefore, the Irish oftentimes were relegated to the hardest, most difficult, and most deadly work. Now, oftentimes this became very political, and in fact, during the 1850s, a political party called the Know Nothings sprung up in order to make sure that Irish immigrants would be kept in a place of subservience. These were led by groups of people called the nativists. Nativists oftentimes were Englishmen who had come in the 17th, 18th century, and so they felt like they had been here long enough that they could actually keep down the Irish that were coming now. These people called themselves, and they actually had the gall to call themselves Native Americans, saying that they had been here since the beginning of the United States. Now, they still called Indians Indians. Now, you have homework tonight, and it's pretty simple. I would like you to interview your parents to kind of get your own story about where you are from. I want you to ask them the following questions. Where is your family from originally? When did they come to the United States? Give a specific year or as close an approximation as they can. Why did they come here? Was it a push or a pull factor? Where did they go initially when they got to the United States? And then how and when did they end up in California, and particularly Los Angeles? We will discuss this in class tomorrow, and you are going to be expected to demonstrate your family's path from their home countries to here. Now, you don't have to pick both parents, just one will be